Hello and welcome to QTV. I am Babukar Sise and thank you very much for joining us. Our topic for discussion today is human trafficking. We all know that human trafficking is a gross human rights violations, and it happens for various reasons to various peoples, including women and children. And to discuss this matter, to raise awareness, and to see how to combat the menace, I have the pleasure to introduce to you representatives from IOM, Migration Office, and also NATIP, which is National Agency Against Trafficking in Persons. On my immediate left here is Usman George Baji, who is the National Program Officer for IOM. And on my immediate right is Tulay Jawara Sise, the Executive Director of National Agency Against Trafficking in Persons. And on my far right, I have Yusufa Sanyang, and is the Data Officer at NATIP, which is National Agency Against Trafficking in Persons. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you.
And to begin with, as I said, human trafficking is a very, very important subject. But I will let our sister, Tulay Jawara Sise, first to explain to us what human trafficking is.
Thank you very much, Babukar. Good afternoon, viewers. I am Tulay Jawara Sise, and I'm the Executive Director of the National Agency Against Trafficking in Persons. The revised laws of the Gambia, Volume 3, Caps 1304, is the Trafficking in Persons Act of the National Assembly. And this created the National Agency Against Trafficking in Persons. The agency came into existence in December 2011 and is housed at the Ministry of Justice. There is a functioning board of directors in place and an operationalized task force. The agency is under the purview of the Ministry of Justice and also under the able supervision of our able Attorney General and Minister of Justice. There's a functioning board of directors in place and an operationalized task force. NATIP's mandate basically is to combat cases of trafficking in persons, to fight against cases of trafficking in persons. The Gambia is termed as a transit point, a destination point, and a source country for cases of human trafficking. The Gambia as a country have signed and ratified the Palermo Protocol, just like many other countries, which is the protocol to prevent, suppress, and punish those involved in trafficking in persons, especially women and children. And this supplements the United Nations Conventions Against Transnational Organized Crime.
Well articulated, and thank you so much for that definition. But also, there is human trafficking and there is smuggling. And sometimes it confuses people. What is the difference?
Basically, when we talk about human trafficking and migrant smuggling, they are two distinct crimes. Migrant smuggling or smuggling of migrants is a crime against the state, and human trafficking is a crime against an individual. The rationale behind this is, when you talk about migrant smuggling, there is a financial gain. When you talk about human trafficking, there is economic gain. With smuggling of migrants, the migrant will always consent to going or moving across transnational borders. With human trafficking, the migrant or the trafficker, not the trafficker, but the traffic victim, can actually consent, but then consent may be irrelevant. Human trafficking and migrant smuggling have cross-cutting issues. They're interrelated. For example, when it comes to cases of migrant smuggling, when the smuggled person moves from one country to another, or when the smuggled person crosses border, there is a fee paid, and that is the end of the transaction. With human trafficking, there is continuous exploitation. But again, the reason why I said they're similar in nature and have cross-cutting issues. A smuggled person can consent to being smuggled to another country, and at transit point, that smuggled person can be exploited, and smuggling of migrants then becomes trafficking in persons. So that's the difference between smuggling of migrants and trafficking in persons.
So it's like those who go to Libya consented.
Yes.
They actually went to somebody and said, take me to Libya. But what you are saying, when you arrive there, then the smuggling can actually change to human trafficking, because they could be kidnapped and then, you know, used against their will.
Yeah, that is human trafficking.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
And like in the Gambia here, what is the trend at the moment? Can you give us statistics?
Yes, basically when you talk about human trafficking or trafficking in persons or trafficking in human beings, it comes in its different forms. Like I said earlier, there is internal trafficking and external trafficking. In the Gambia, what we have, when we talk about trafficking in persons, the different forms are forced labor, worst forms of child labor, child sex tourism, operations backway to a certain extent, removal of human organs, sexual exploitation, and international labor migration exploitation. So you've just mentioned Libya or the Middle East. The most common form of trafficking in persons we have in the Gambia is the international labor migration exploitation and sexual exploitation. So we have Gambian girls going to the Middle East to work as house girls, and they get trafficked, they work for long hours, their passports are taken away from them, they have been deceived. Because when you look at the international definition of trafficking in persons, it's the recruitment of, the transportation of, the harboring of, the deceit of, a person, using a person's vulnerability for the purposes of exploitation within and across our national borders. So the most common form of trafficking in persons we have in the Gambia is Gambian girls going to the Middle East to work as house girls, and they get exploited as an end result. With internal trafficking in persons, what we have is Nigerian girls coming to the Gambia to work as sex workers. So presently at NATIP, we have quite a number of cases of Gambian girls going to the Middle East to work as house girls, and Nigerian girls coming into the Gambia to work as sex workers and are exploited and have been deceived.
Okay, so as the executive director of NATIP, what is your office doing about this? And if you come to know these issues, what do you do?
Basically, when cases are normally reported either at the nearest police station or at the National Agency Against Trafficking in Persons. If at the nearest police station, the case is reported to the National Agency Against Trafficking in Persons at NATIP, they're investigators from immigration, police, and NATIP, and the SIS. So these are all security officers stationed at NATIP to investigate the cases. So these cases are thoroughly investigated, and then a legal opinion is sought and granted to see whether the elements of trafficking in persons are present. If there is, then the case is prosecuted at the courts.
Okay, thank you so much for that. I'll come to you, Yusfa. Yes. She has actually explained about how these things happen. And in your own perspective, what are the indicators? How can you know? Because by looking at someone in the street probably selling something, or you see a man holding a woman's hand and walking in the street or at the beach, what are some of the indicators that can alert people to know that this particular person, or this person you see is in trouble, or this is happening?
Thank you, Mr. Sise. One of the red flags of those indicators, you can see that the victim is always submissive. And then again, sometimes the person that they are working with will always take the lead in regards to asking questions. The person will always answer for the victim, him or herself. And then again, when it goes to like at the border area, the same way happens when it comes to transportation in the vehicles. You will see that in most cases it happens when it's a child. You will see that the child is always quiet, and then the person that they are working with to all the questions that they are asking or the immigrations are trying to lead to their investigation. And then again, the most important thing on the indicators are you will see scars, there will be bruises around somebody. When you see those things, it shows you a direct way that this person is a victim of trafficking.
So basically you said submissive.
They're always submissive.
The person trafficking or the trafficker always take the leading role.
Yeah, sure.
As you said. Okay, that's
and
how
you can also find them in brothels, hotel areas.
The role of the community in addressing human trafficking. What do you think the community should do more in addressing this menace?
In addressing this menace, the community needs to help out. It's not that it's just the job of the government alone, but in the society itself, at our homes, everywhere, be it a citizen or non-citizen, we all have our rights. And then in this sense, we can all report when you see a case of a human trafficking. You can report to a social worker, you can report to the nearest police station, you can also report to NATIP. So I know later in the day, one of our colleagues will share some numbers that will be available with regards to reporting cases. But like I said, the community has to stop what we call the culture of silence and then this Musla syndrome of seeing something and then putting it at the back of the curtain. These are things that we need to come out, because if we don't report cases, we will never get anybody prosecuted, and then victims cannot be identified.
Anyway, that's important. I mean, I think the most important thing, among the most important thing here is, as you earlier, indicators and how to identify.
Yes. Because
not many people know. Because if you see two people going, or you see a child, especially these bruises you are talking about, not many people know about it, or someone taking a leading role, and the other one is submissive, as you said at the beginning.
Sure.
And I think we need to let the community know, so that they can be vigilant and they could be able to know in order to report the cases.
Okay, I would mind once again, my name's Usman George Baji.
Oh, okay. Usman George.
Now, looking at the indicators, you first spoke very well about the indicators, but then I also want to throw light on some of the indicators that may be prevailing at the community level. But it's also good for the community members to observe some of those things, and then once they see anything, they start raising a flag. That's to report some of those things. One is like, at the community level, you see too many people living in one small house. It is something that is bringing suspicious. Why are they there? Too many people in a single house, one small house. That is also an indicator. And then another thing is like seeing a girl below the age of 18 years involved in sexual affairs. Like this is somebody who is less than 18 years and she's engaged in sexual relationship. So sometimes you need to find out why is this person. You realize that it's also an indicator.
Like the person having a boyfriend somewhere, or
now, like he was talking about people going out to the, let's say, to nightclubs, or they have place where they usually hang around. So you see a small girl, if you go out sometimes, you may be driving at night, you see girls below the age of 14, 13, 11 years who are just hanging out. Why are they doing that? They are engaged in sexual relation. And not say one can say that they are prostitute. They are engaged in something just to get money, because they have to report. Like some people will just say they have to balance their madams, they have to balance their boss, that they have to pay back the money to those who brought them into the government, as they are exploiters. And then if you look at it also, sometimes you realize that if you go out, you see some people, they are always in one type of dress, just like a uniform. Within your community, anytime you see that person, the person is always in one type of dress, just like a uniform to that particular person. That's an indicator. Whether irrespective of the weather, whether it is hot, whether it is cold, the person is always in that particular type of dress. So once we see that, it is something that worth finding out. Why is this particular person in this type of dress? Sometimes you realize that they are also having too much or too many debt. They have a lot of debt, because they will take their things so that at the end of the day they can pay once they get their money, but at the end of the month they may not have anything in order to pay their debt. So they just be accumulating debt. So usually they have a lot of debt. And another thing is like they are always in a haste. Even if they are because usually what happens is like if you look around, you realize that there are certain people, even if they are sent to the shop, they will be in a hurry. Because once they stay there for some time, when they go back, they may be punished, or they may try to find, why do you spend that much period to where I sent you? So they are always in a hurry, because the master or the exploiter is usually trying to command them to say that, just to avoid people from talking to them, so that to find out what situation they are in. So these are some of the indicators that also prevail within the community level. So
these are some of the things that the society must look out for.
Yes, sir.
And if they see anything like this, what should they do?
Like he's rightly said, it should be reported to the nearest police station or to NATIP, social workers, and NATIP will provide you with the numbers that they can call and then report such things.
Okay, so use for NATIP, you have social workers?
Actually, social welfare is responsible on the
women's.
Yeah, on the protection side. So you will see that whenever we have a case, we alert the Department of Social Welfare, and then they will also provide us with a social worker who will always join the investigators at investigating a case, because these are times where we need to identify the elements. Because it's not that if you report a case, just in that immediate moment we determine it as a potential trafficking case. We need to look at it at that level to see that there is the three elements are present. That is the act, the means, and the purpose. Okay, so you can see that again there is the fourth, which is the target, and then the target is always the victim.
Okay, to like Jawara Sisi, I'll come to you in a moment. But again, Mr. Baji, you work for IOM. So what is IOM's approach in combating human trafficking?
Oh, thank you so much. I once again remind the viewers that this program is funded by IOM through JT Fund. That's like the project is sponsored or supported by the U.S. State Department, responsible for monitoring and combating trafficking in person. At IOM, we work on 4P approach. That is 4P approach. One is preventing. That is like we try to prevent trafficking in person at the national and community level. We normally do that through organizing awareness raising campaign at the national and community level, sensitization of the community members for them that to increase their capacity, increase the level of awareness at the community level for them to be aware of things that Yusuf has just talking about, that's trafficking in person. And then we also organize training for the journalists and also media houses so that they can better report TIP, that they can report trafficking in person. As I'm speaking to you, we are even working on with our communication unit to organize a training for the journalists. Now the second P, that is prevention. Now when you talk about prevention, we try to, protection. We provide protection services. That is like we come up with national development of national referral mechanism. That is, when you talk about national referrals mechanism, it's a document that enable or allow the partners to have a single document, just like a single window, whereby all the partners will know what is expected of them. It's like a form of an SOP that involves each of the partners, that's both government, NGOs, and other organizations of their role. So it's a tool that can be used to refer victims of trafficking for them to access other services that they may need, ranging from medical services, legal services, and it goes on. Now, we also provide direct assistance to the victims of trafficking. That's by giving them food aid and also some support service that they may need. Recently, we have just donated some items to NATIP, which were meant for one-stop centers. One-stop centers are located in 4 hospitals in the Gambia. That is Royal Edward Francis Small Teaching Hospital, Kanifing General Hospital, Bansan General Hospital, and Bakote Shelter Clinic. Now, we work in hand in glove with these facilities so that if a victim of traffic needs a medical service, you can go to any of these centers and then have it free at no cost. At those centers too, they also work with the social welfare department. They work with the police and they also work with some legal agencies like FLAG. This is why we call it one-stop center. So once a victim is there, you don't need to go out in order to access other services. Now we move to the third one, that is prosecution. That is it, that is when we're talking about that P, that is to strengthen the national capacities. That's to strengthen the national effort in order to identify, investigate, and prosecute the offenders or the perpetrators. So there we are working with directly with hand in glove with NATIP and also the judicial system. So we are also working on the development of the joint SOP, because like Yusuf says, sometimes when people raise flag at the border level, they don't know where to report some of these cases. But with this joint SOP, that will help them to know where do you actually make your report. And it will help each of the partners to know what is your role. Once a case is reported to you, what do you do? When you are done with that person, you pass it to the next person. So we are coming up with SOP. And also training of the law enforcement officers. We did some training at the, with the TSU, that's with the Tourist Security Unit at Senegambia Hotel. And now we are also planning to organize another one for the law enforcement officers. Now the fourth one, that is partnership. Here we are partnering with not only with the government, but with all the relevant stakeholders, NGOs and other international organizations. In partnership, what we do here is like we raise awareness in terms of what ethical recruitment, also bilateral labor agreement. When you talk about bilateral labor agreement, sometimes we talk about sending some people to other countries for them to work.
It's like cutting the World Cup in Qatar. Gambia has been sending people to go and work there.
But do we have a bilateral labor agreement with them? So we also help our partners, or we support our partners in order to develop such a document.
Okay.
So as of now, IOM is working on that principle of 4P approach.
Yusfa, dégg nañ lu Ousmane Jojwa. We heard what Ousmane said. We will go for a break, short commercial break. But before that, I would like to ask you to tell me about your final words about human trafficking in general.
Thank you, Mr. Cisse. Anyway, my final words to the general public. Today, as we are here at QTV, our main objective here is to raise awareness to the country at large. But I would like to take it on in Mandinka for the benefit of the local languages. Bi na simfanya mo minti bi nata mi nyini QTV jang walen puruka jama mol kalamtandi. Ke kalamtandi minna walen e ka fomi human trafficking walen mo borondoti ka bondi dula kari ka samba dulato. Comme intol ka kacha nyinna dula jamal leto ndun ka ke dulato mi alon ko like wala fana bam mol fana kalamtandi la nyin ko la pour mol sa lonko nyin sototal anda sotota Gambia le andum ba ko normale wala tinna office of loading Ministry of Justice kay randi ko ye momo mi muta nyin ko kono loi bundal le fana be laringay andum busar dal le fana be larinje so pour mol sen hakilo to bake mben ke kuol fana minto amanke koni mo mang fensoto e nyanna sembo ila sembo tala kanne ka nyin ku sifa kala wolem ka mo nene ka bondi janka sambadula kari ka faye ko ni fotata je mbe nyin nakele karal kata minu taral ka bululal min tara tonya itolta lon nako ite lafta ka nyin ku sifa la ke nyin marila but ite ila miro tema ipareta kam min ke nyin mari lafta ni na minna wo fana mum fenneti mi alon ka man bete an sen hakilo to je baki wala nabi natana jam pour ka mol hakilo bulandi ka itandi ko human trafficking a sototale and then mol le fana bata dañi kon
so baraka bake ya fanya wale ka mo borondo ka mo bondi ka sambar la to anda man ka sawoti ka do kundi wala ka laño ya anda man ka sawoti baraka bake we will now take a short break or commercial break, but when we come back the discussion will continue, so stay tuned.
style ak QTV 2020 bii dara du yomb ana yéen ñi nga xamante yéenay designer si teelo si ak ñiy jaay piis ak ñu xam ci def ba mu baax nee naa leen QTV ren dañuy dolli cere yokku ñeex ak 2020 bii mooy suñu third edition bëgg nañ nag àndaat ak ñi ñu daan àndal waaye nag képp ku ñu bëgg a dabit escalier lañ dañuy eeg ku bëgg a eeg kaa ñu eeg ndax QTV ku ci jaar dem jokkool ak ñun ci nu mu gën a gaawee 32 44 44 4 ak QTV ku ànd ak ñun dem ku ñuy seen sax da ngay dem.
Welcome back, and again, thanks for joining us. Again, our program today, the topic is human trafficking, as I mentioned earlier at the beginning. I'll come to you, Tulai Jawara Cissé. Pour nga wax ñu ci wolof yow yaay executive director NATIP mooy National Agency Against Human Trafficking dawal nit ñi yóbbu leen from benn béréb to another against fekka bugguñ ko léegi ndax mun nga ñoo wax seen liggéey bi naka la mel.
jërëjëf Baboucarr asalaamaaleykum mbooloo yi seetaan tey suñu waxtaani human trafficking la Gambia bi am nañ office bu nekk si Ministry of Justice, which is the Attorney General's Chambers and Ministry of Justice, and then ñun ñoo responsible pour combat cases of trafficking in persons. suñu waxee trafficking in persons daf dee ñëw si forms yu bari dëkk bi nag am na loi boo xam ne dafa tere trafficking in persons mooy human trafficking daf di am lu mel ni ay traffickers moom mooy ñi nga xam ne dañoo jël nit ñi di leen yóbbu beneen dëkka di leen defloo yoo xam ne bëgguñ koo def loi bi mu ngi fa te daf koo tere liñ dee liggéey NATIP mooy for exemple yaa ngi am case yi nit ñëw na report si case yi trafficking am nañ fa ay investigators yoo xam ne dañoo investigate cases yi suñ investigate cases yi ba pare dañ ko dee yóbbu si Ministry of Justice NATIP mu ngi under Ministry of Justice under the Attorney General's Chambers and Ministry of Justice and suñ able Attorney General moom mooy supervise NATIP ba pare ñu ngi am suñ board of directors in place and also am nañ operationalized task force ñi nga xam ne ay stakeholders yoo xam ne la dañoo work together pour combat pour xeex trafficking in persons cases yi suñ ko indee investigators yi dañ dee investigate cases yi suñ paree investigation of cases yi dañ ko dee yóbbu ci database officer bi mu input case bi si dataam ba pare ñu indi ko pour legal opinion buñ ko xoolee ñu gis ne case si trafficking la dañ ko dee yóbbu si Ministry of Justice pour yeneen ñu def legal opinion ak tamit pour ñu prosecute cases yi comme ni ma ko waxee dañ am loi boo xam ne dafa tere trafficking in persons so su case bi demee court bu dee case bu baax la dinañ ko prosecute in court and then bu demee court tamit boo xoolee loi bi which is the Trafficking in Persons Act 2007 section 28 part 7 subsections 1 and 2 dafa joxe international definition of trafficking in persons moom mooy dañ laa recruit dañ laa transfer dañ laa nax dañ laa génnee si dëkk bi ñu yóbbu la ñu nax la ne la liggéey nga am boo demee doo fa fekk loolu da nga faa fekk leneen dañ laa wax ne da nga am liggéey hôtel wala ñu ne la da nga am liggéey restaurant waaye boo demee dañ laa yóbbu xëj na si këri jàmbur pour nga dem liggéey comme mbi naan daal amoon na time boo xam ne génn nañ fi dem nañ ci benn dëkk si Middle East bi pour dem jëli ay jànqa yi nga xam ne dañ leen trafic buñ àggee ba foofu ñoom ñëpp dañ daw si kër yiñ nekkoon ñu dem toog si benn Gambian house bu ndaw buñ dawee dañoo daw bàyyi seen passeport yi si ñi nga xam ne ñoom ñoo leen recruit dañoo dem through an organized gang boo xam ne am na ñu nekk Gambia am na ñu nekk Beirut dañ laa jagaral sa passeport fii ñu jagaral la lu nekk jagaral la sa air ticket jox la visa bi yëpp ne la demal yeneen tamit lu ma bëgg a wax tam mooy ne boo gisee ne dara yomba na torop si yow lu nekk ñu ne dinañ la ko defaral kon nga toogaat nga seetaat ko nga xalaataat ko parce que boo àggee foofu nax lañ laa nax boo àggee foofu di nga nangu ne di nga dem waaye boo demee leneen nga faa fekka ñun biñ àggee Beirut jànga yi am na ñoo xam ne ñu ngi daw ñu ngi jël seen bagage yi di daw di génna si kër gi ñoo liggéey duñ leen jox lekka ñu lekka bi suur ba pare dañoo liggéey long hours dañoo door liggéey xëy na ay 6 o'clock si suba la ñoo start duñ pare ba 12 o'clock si guddi liggéey bi dafa métti si ñoom dañ leen a jox ay liggéeyu góor pour ñu def so loolu la ñoo ooyee labour migration exploitation léegi li ñu def mooy dañ dem ba foofu ñu liggéey ak PF Beirut IOM ñu dimbale ñu delloo si jànga yi back Gambia biñ leen delloo si Gambia tamit dangaa gis ne nguur bi joxoon na leen assistance ba pare dem nañ si Department of Social Welfare ñu liggéey ak International Social Services ba pare ñu liggéey ak SIDAC moom it beneen NGO la bi nga xam ne dañ responsible si victims of trafficking mënoon nañ leen a jox comme reintegration package boo xam ne dinañ leen jox tuuti xaalis boo xam ne dinañ mun a door ñu def a small business nga xam ne loolu dina leen reintegrate back into society ba pare duñ dee stop foofu tamit dañ dee uti traffickers yi ñu prosecute leen ñu ngi prosecute nag am nañ cases yu bari si code bi waaye amanguñ nag possible conviction waaye xam naa very soon dinañ mun a am possible conviction yéen ay tamit ñi leen dee yóbbu dañ dee daw doo leen dañoo jom bail doo leen gis waaye loi bi tamit wane na si section 28 subsections 4 and 5 part 7 of the Trafficking in Persons Act ne buñ la convicté di nga fay $15,000 di nga fay $50,000 be $500,000 so nothing less than $50,000 and a maximum of $500,000 après dinañ la dugal kaso for 15 years to life imprisonment so de jàppa nañ la as a suspect and you're convicted for trafficking in persons su dee bu halal la nag comme child trafficking because when you talk about trafficking am na mag am na halal bu dee child trafficking la boobu tamit di nga fay nothing less than $50,000 ba $500,000 ba pare dinañ la téye pour life imprisonment so bii du 15 years ba life it's life imprisonment parce que bii yëfi halal la child trafficking la so basically loolu lañ dee def nati
jërëjëf Tulay Jawara Ceesay sa kaddu bi rafet na Tulay dina welcome Joseph Mendy. Joseph Mendy is actually head of investigations at NATIP, National Agency Against Trafficking in Persons. Joseph, you are welcome to the program. I will come to you in a moment, but to Usman George Baji, mande kakanwala bao Tulay kwendi mol maning sura kanwala. First half no molye bao nyim molu minka molu borindi ke sambaka kuol kelateng. Amanke sawoti isa fono mole o mo sifal mol nyante lonna no nyaari na wala ke suute ka niamo ebe mo report la wala ba fala police wala mo ba tol contact la ya fenne suute mo bala sate kono wala moje e sobita fenna monem fente mi nyanta mol sobindi la
okay baraka baake ni comme tulla ya fa nyame ni ajibe abs kerim banko kanjane par janni me fintila kata wandi banko to mi yalon ko akataje nga jibe jam fanam faka keno jan pos atabe nyamente ni ajibe anin smuggling mi fata ataka keno hanila banko fonkan isita no bolonkon le badum surta wala binki wala badin sudum e kay ko wala ndimma min be buljante lafto nga samba kombo nga dundu karamoto je kan tumando ro bota santor abu kontana bakale kaje ko adingo min be kolya kono je tumanda na sima dafa ko kondo wala na kondo dafa ka sima do dino bonna ya samana fo jang e ma dunde karamoto akete bulu jongonte bun kon e dingol bita kan school o mantra fenna so kon namake do kote ne o dinin sifal jibe e be keri na banko kanjani ni tata siloka e ko letra banana wafole ke tay fe wafol ni tata fa ni ko do fo manna e min dile pour kara na mam bay kemde ke bouté so ka dinin sifaye nyaade de jama ja ni dinni wala ni e baloji e baramol biye ni ani ka mine mu tabaka son kafo because ka sila ne ko ni afo be min kelela ni wolbe siala mimbe ngamin kelanu abalo be ka ke baramotle abuka fono yaje wato wada ab korontor ngabe detere hanya ki bidi ko rek ab korontore ana molle traja sila fi bidi kite wa afrika ta teta ay ni noltuje ni anyi nin ka fan to mona te dangula te bamna ko kulbali ale amanja kulbali ale kamin fa wala ni ne momo diamuta mbalo nan ni ngalo be butere memin kila ko mum molti melon ka botnan dula to mando ne fo man findira sate kon yo ni yaji be bantara mol min fon ka traja mo jama e kata bun kono bu min be detere to mando kono kili se mo tan traje wala min siata mo tanti ni oje dawada sate kono nyanta kan hakilo ni ngo sifaye nyanta ka police ko man nga tandi la ko nyine be kedin to laja bu nebi jang wa mol nanga mo min bi jewol fon siata be bi kay lam fodul kala la nda ko fodul kala ni yo do fana bije ni aje dinno mi alon ka man sanyi tanin sesi wala ni man ka sa dinno mi alon ka man bal kuya adunda ke ko kon suto wala raka finti soma da kana anno be ka fen fana jabul tumando sa ko akara ndo ko la ka fen so para mum mole na do ko so aka ko samba ka di mole la yo ado fana bije ni aje wate wada bitaka kan fana ani mo bitaka wala comme ça jati sa fono nya wala ni mo min bitaka nja o bukala fay diam moy ne nyini karo ke ko kula rek wala ka jabi so fana mu kulati mi yalon ko nyanta kan hakiloto nin atano bodal to comme ça ni ka dum bankor wala ka findi nin police la nyini karo wala be tambila nyato ay nyini karo ni jabi so en se hakiloto wodo nin signol nin danna mol mi yalon ko dinol be bulum wala hani ke bal fay be danna walte ngaje ko dinol ni wala musol ni e balobe baramari wati ni nyini ka tuma do ne dinol ni ka na fa mi ya barama ni ke ba nyini ka da be kuma dul fon fole because ma ke dinol se la ka fay bata mu hanyala ka mu me fay tuba bol sa wala del bi economical bi de tout eta mu me
tonya ela kumo kumata bake Usman wala sabu kabri ya foko albe na security forces albe karandi kanne pour se nyim mol sute no nya o kumata bake ba to le katara na nelto to le katara bodal to ko ya fata nyame andu jama ka dunnan ne walla so wolbe ko siro kilale ya lomi be kering ela kumo nyata mbe murana na luntan kam minna rasany Joseph Mendy, head of investigation. Joseph afalentim be corona jamano le kono anda dunia be barande mo be toraring ya mira ko corona anin nyim mole min ba on tol fam be silja mi alon ko to mando man tol traffic tol be bataring ya mira ko corona ne nyim mol mi alon ko ye borndi wala traffic anyanta mu effect le sot lawol wo mariol to
abarka bake babukar comme ya fo nyamen is kule mi alon ko corona mu kule mi alon ko ay dunya be le batandi andu fem mi alon ko amantara gambia da mabe dunya be le batandi aka munda ko molla nyanto na keku na tani na abes mantara soniari and comme ya keta wala nyama sign mol beta bedamen minul tara nyin kol kegan aka munda kon tolfi atalata do manding nyi watinding kon kato mbuka la report all soto coming aka soto nyame a soto rale nung janim bedun la kono bari naminata ke ko wolni nata tala kato ngabirin tunta menga moy ko World Health Organization ya for social distancing in regulations so nata so wala tinna inata je ko sign komi nyim jankarol timi ya lon kabe molle batadika petata fanan tol fanan na ke kolke minol nata non ni la kol jubele nge kiskis ngalon ne ko dol bijele voltale bari sign bitala na kenyadi o womu aketa no janin ke so nyimbe kala janin COVID-19 mekala so kabiri woketa ndol fadan na do ko nyatala na ke nyatala bari ko na siari wolem ko wolni. So if I may comment in English a bit. Yes, okay. What I'm trying to put across is we all know that presently the world is affected with COVID-19, which is a global problem, and Gambia is not an exception. Prior to COVID-19, yes, we've been receiving cases. And during the COVID-19 years, there were cases that we were reviewing, but we could not go far with those cases because of this COVID-19. And we all are aware that the World Health Organization also advised on the social distancing, which I believe everybody is taking care of. So in that case, most of those cases or most of these activities are very limited now because there is no movement, because we all know the borders are closed and then people are not moving. So being stagnant, actually you cannot do anything. So maybe they might be outside or other areas to establish contacts, but as of now, everything is at standstill. So for investigators, yes, those we received were investigated and then reports were prepared for prosecution, but we are still going by the advice that is given until and unless government says COVID-19 is gone, let's get back to normal working hours, then we start working on old files reviewing. So I think that is what is holding us as we speak.
Thank you so much, Joseph. I will come to Lai, obviously. Probably we'll end the program with you. Munga was all of so bugenga explain news final kadu si program.
Thank you very much. Let me just buttress on Joseph's statement. He talked about COVID-19 and maybe the only beauty I should say about COVID-19 is that it's the first time that borders are closed, because it's trafficking is a cross-border crime. It's a transnational organized crime. We have no new cases of trafficking, so people are not moving, so there is no external trafficking during this period of COVID-19. But notwithstanding, we have internal cases which we're paying particular attention to, and we're working towards investigations on the tip cases in the Gambia. To conclude, I thank you all for your time. The message I want to send out to the populace is that we should all put our hands together. Trafficking in persons, it's a global concern. It's not only a problem in the Gambia, but a global problem. And that I think we should all put our hands together to fight and stamp out the menace of modern day slavery. I thank you very much.
And I'll come to you, Usman George Baji. Okay. Binekang, isaje ko ni mosi fa le fana sela kumala bango fo. Ni min sobita ni ko la nyanta ko min kala nyanta jimañol le kumandila. E fana sela wala IOM fana be do ko min na se kumala bango fo jannen ka programme nka kumfa.
Baraka bake comme ça Joseph ya fanyame bodal be sorondine bare however anti tulay ko nyadi molbi jere mi yalan ko nata jam banko ka already e bonina banko dolto min kala sunkude ne wala min samana ka bana wandi banko bodal be sorondine ba wolbe molbule min kala la exploiters han sayente nyaje movement oni ya restrictly bon ni wata do findere e katami mo la silol kan so waya tani la fo han say wolbe ke kan mi yalan ko anin silo manta so mbe baadingol ni signol ni do ku nyol be danila ni mi yow sifaje ya report wato do bi ñu kanale because ma e ke silandi ka fe ko alla ni banko fawda mo nyaaton kol fi jamal fawda be ñu kol kon so ke silandi wala so wol bu ka hani comme ça ka findi mol kan ten ka report ko ne mo samana ya bonna banko da samana ka ya silandi ya fa just induce fear into that person ya tanara ko kari dabye so tal na bita jamal ya bo sa samira no fan ko ni bita min no miya kan na case report sa ken fawda bi je haba fa la ñiyel so ni ya sifaje de dol bi jere kilin kilon le wakile kata kafo ba ni ya comme ça nga indicator min fode momi suspecta ko ni ne be ni mari bala makol seta bala mari wato wada jabe korontari wato waje kata do ko aden ko du kana 5 kilon kata bala comme ça la informo yo ni o sifaje se reporting kono natif pour ñi kam messe mako
wallahi se police
fanan ko mano
ya foy se sobindi dal ko nga fende dal sobita kullaje
ñine bije police mako ya
kiskisi ni wala bije salon ni o fananti je salon me o ko sabo baraka bake Usman George Joseph Mendy. Also I'm coming to you to say your final words as a head of investigations at your department. What are your final words?
Thank you very much, Mr. Babukar. Again, it's a fact that we're yet to hear someone being locked or whatsoever, but NATIB is doing everything possible to make sure that we get these people prosecuted. But I think it's a process that goes on. We have to follow those processes. When we, finish those processes, then we can come up with the results. So my advice to the general public would be, if they have any suspected case or any case, let them report it to the nearest police station, or there are contact numbers that I will also have to give, yes, so that they can call directly. Yes. And these contact numbers are 3034-590. 3034-590, and we have another official 722-7213. So these numbers, if you call anytime, any hour, we will respond, because there is a unit specifically responsible for investigating, and if any of our citizens or non-citizen is involved and acting in our own soil to exploit or to tarnish our image, I don't think that would be good for our country. So we have to go all out to make sure that we get them prosecuted.
Thank you so much, Joseph Mendy, Head of Investigations at NATIB. Tulay Jawara Cissé, Jerejef Sisa Kadu Refet Yoyu, and Usman George Baji, Baraka Bake Lao Kumanyi Malto, na program of Fela Banta. Thank you so much, viewers. And this has brought us to the end of this program. And just to remind you, this program is sponsored by IOM. But obviously, we'll be hosting this kind of program to tell the people, to enlighten the people about the dangers of human trafficking. And until we come your way again, have a pleasant day.